And so make sure you're working with the right person for your specific situation so that you get exactly what you need and nothing more.
Welcome to the All Things Wildfire Podcast, where we delve into the latest trends and hot topics in protecting properties against wildfire. So sit back, relax, and join us as we arm you against disaster.
Thank you, everyone, for joining me for another session of All Things Wildfire. And today, a guest that I have returning back to All Things Wildfire is Mr. Kurt Thoennessen. And so I want to be able to understand, Kurt, from you. You do a couple of things, okay? You're like an insurance specialist that happens to be a utility knife. So that's kind of how I see you right now at this point, because I've seen you over at PRMA. Everyone knows you. Everyone loves you. You have a lot of activity going on out there, but you are part of the Erickson Insurance Advisors, right? As a broker, but then also you're the CEO of Risk Review Software, which helps brokers really understand the risk and makes it easier for them to gather information so that way they can do what they have to do best, which is advise the consumer, the client on where and how to protect their risk. So thank you, number one, for joining me again, Kurt. I appreciate your ability to be flexible again. I wanted to jump on to now. We're in 2024, okay? 2023 has passed. I think we all expected wildfire to be something that was going to hit us hard, especially on the West Coast. And it turned out to be not so vulnerable, right? There were a sequence of many wildfires, but they were actually dealt with pretty quickly and didn't turn into anything massive. What's your thought now going into 2024? You're still advising your clients. Are you taking your foot off of the gas pedal and saying, hey, no need to worry anymore. Wildfire threat is gone. Risk is gone. We're going back to normalcy. Is any of that happening?
It's a great question, OP. And and first, thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to talk to you. The wildfire topic is a big one in the insurance business right now. And, like you described, the events that happened, although they may not have, I don't know what the right word is, but the insurance industry has reeled from the events over the last couple years. And we are dealing with it in a positive fashion. We're doing everything we can as an industry to provide solutions. And so it's not an easy road at this point. At this point, we see insurance companies that have left the state. Insurance companies have stopped writing business in the state. Insurance companies have changed underwriting guidelines for what they will insure and how they will insure it and the coverage that they will provide. And the state governments have changed the way that they focus on underwriting and providing insurance to consumers of the state of California. So there is a lot going on. There is a ton going on. You say there's a lot going on with me. There's a lot going on with wildfire and insurance in the state of California. So, I'd say there's a lot of good people working on it and trying to find solutions, but it is a very tough road these days.
Boom. Yeah, so true. And by the way, before we move on, I got to say your background, brother, what is up with that? It looks amazing. I'm going to have to borrow that from you. That is so good. Did you build that out yourself or you just use a photo?
So truth be told, that is a creation of ChatGPT.
Love it.
So AI, type in, create Zoom background with fire protection apparatus, and that's what you get. That's awesome.
And for those of you listening on audio only, I'd encourage you to jump on YouTube so you can see what I'm saying. This is pretty cool. I had no idea that was AI generated. It looks really, really cool. So Kurt, we understand, and in talking to more and more experts too, I spoke to Heather a week or two ago from Burns & Wilcox, and the market is not getting better. It's going to stay pretty hard, meaning that, the prerequisites, the requirements are still going to be very, very tough. You have more and more insureds concerned about their rates. Kurt, we ran into one customer. This is more middle market, and I know a lot of your specialty has to do with high net worth clients, and I do want to touch on that. But in the middle market, we had one customer with an insurance company that said, "Hey, you need to do ember-resistant vents. Install these." And so we installed the ember-resistant vents, and then as we were literally there on site, she opened up another letter from the same carrier saying, by the way, we also are going to require you to enclose your eaves. And this lady started crying because she's on a fixed income. She doesn't know where she's going to get this money from to make it happen. And enclosing the eaves is a much different investment than installing ember-resistant vents. It's just larger and there's a lot more work. And so it really hit us to understand, like, wow, and I'm not painting the picture that the insurance company is a big bad wolf. All I'm saying is this is how it's being perceived sometimes, where, why are they charging me so much money to make this happen? When the reality is they have to minimize their risk. There's enough information out there now, enough data points out there now that will tell you these are the 5, 6, 7 things that we have to do, or you have to do, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, to your home in order for us to, with comfort, give you insurance. Otherwise, it's just a matchbox, and you're not allowing us to. We need to coexist together in this risk place. So we're seeing that happen. Are you seeing any of that happen in the high net worth, where they're shocked or they're appalled or they're upset?
Absolutely. So, and I'm really glad you brought up that story, because it brings up two things that come to mind that I'll talk about, but definitely in the high net worth space. And you have to remember, I am in the insurance industry. I am very familiar with insurance products, with the way insurance works and all this other stuff. But the majority of people do not understand insurance. They do not understand how it works, what it does, et cetera. And so that is my job as an advisor, to help educate my clients about what's going on in this world of insurance. And so when someone doesn't understand something like insurance, and then they get these letters telling them they must do this, it can be very upsetting. And especially when you add the component of affordability and time and frustration, because these things, it's not just about money sometimes. My clients, high net worth, ultra high net worth, they have all the money that they need to pay for these things. But a lot of times it's the frustration factor, it's the time factor too. So that brings me to what I wanted to mention, is that as a broker, as an advisor, any insurance professional really, the number one skill today in helping clients through this period is empathy. Is first just understanding what the situation is, listening to them, hearing their frustrations, hearing what's going on. And sometimes that is 90% of what you can do, or maybe 100% of what you can do, because you might not, as I have found, find a solution for them. And we can talk about that. But empathy is number one. Number two, as you mentioned, there are 5 things, 6 things, whatever. It's a finite list of things that people can do to harden their homes for wildfire. And these are things that can run the gamut on expense, can be very inexpensive or can be very expensive. Anything from, pushing the brush away from your home up to 5 feet to ember-resistant venting. So it's thinking about those things ahead of time and planning to install them if you are in a number one, difficult wildfire zone, if you're near a wildfire zone, and if you're just concerned about wildfire, and if you just want to make yourself and your home more attractive to an insurance company. So empathy first, as an insurance professional today, is key. And then helping your clients harden their homes in a smart way is number 2.
Boom. Kurt, when you say we have to have empathy, man, I think for the agents and brokers and anyone selling, this peace of mind of insurance, that is absolutely crucial. And it's interesting because, Kurt, what we do in disaster restoration, on that side of our business, on the backside of a claim, we have a homeowner call in and they have a flood and they're like underwater and they have this thing going on, or there's been a recent fire and they've had to evacuate and now they're flustered. There are some times, especially when there's a lot of activity, where we receive phone calls and we have to train our staff consistently to not take it as, oh, here, I got another water damage claim coming in, or there's another smoker coming in and Mrs. Smith is pouring out her heart. And we can't be on the other line saying, Mrs. Smith, yes, I got you. Hold on a second. Let me put you on hold, right? Or, let me cut you off in the conversation, or let me tell you the facts. Like, wrong. I mean, we have to be able to connect with our customer, especially now more than ever, even if they just want to vent. And so, if they want to complain about the rates or they want to complain about certain things, let's listen to them. Because this is their truth, this is their reality. And to your point, some customers are frustrated with the cost and expense. Others are frustrated with the inconvenience of time. Like, my life is happening. I've got children in school. I've got this college event. I've got these charity events. I don't have time for this, right? Who can handle it? Just give me the solution. And so everyone has different trigger points. And so empathizing is one of those things that, when you think so far back, I think about one of the first books that I purchased when I wanted to learn how to get into sales. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, right? That's 1940s, man. And that book right now is still so relevant because we've forgotten how to connect with people. We've forgotten how to really share heart to heart, empathizing. And obviously we're in sales. And so we have to convert that into a sale. But the reality is the more that we can empathize, the more that we can connect at a deeper level. And now the sale is more like, I trust you. What do you recommend? You're the expert. Help me out. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, time is critical to a lot of people. I mean, you think about someone who is working on building a multi-million-dollar home, and it's been a 2-year project. And then all of a sudden they're 90% of the way done, and a wildfire wipes through and destroys the house. And now they're back to square one. Like, whether or not they have insurance, like if they have insurance, great, it's going to pay for it, but they still got to wait 2 years now again until they have their house done. So yeah, time is huge. And then they call up the insurance broker saying, hey, this happened. Empathy is going to be 99% of the response that you need to provide at that point. And I also wanted to touch on the importance of working with a specialist for what you as an individual, you as a client purchasing insurance need. Like, I'm a specialist. I work with high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals. That's a specialty because those folks need certain products, they need certain coverages, they need certain things that are not commonly available in all insurance markets, and vice versa. A middle market, call it a middle market home, needs a certain type of insurance as well. They don't need all this stuff that a high net worth client needs. So the importance of working with a specialty insurance broker, insurance professional is very important. So make sure you're working with the right person for your specific situation so that you get exactly what you need and nothing more.
Boom. It's interesting because I think about this, and for the insurance policies, and I just want to expand a little bit on the how crucial it is for not only for high net worth clients, but for all of us to really understand. Because look, the way I see it is that there are some people doing what they do and they're preserving wealth. Okay. And And I'll just give you a quick example. One of the things that I learned early on when I was 27 years old, I was going to all these real estate courses, learning more and more about real estate. One of the speakers talked about wealth preservation. And he talked about how people use insurance to preserve their wealth. And at that age, I'm like, what are you talking about? But the reality is this is how you protect your wealth. And it could be tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, or it could be a few $100,000. There's still, it's relative. The wealth is relative, right? But we still have to protect it. And I think it's important for us to say, okay, what are the high net worth clients using in their playbook that we could potentially use for us, at least to learn? And so I think back to, I had this incident where I bought my teenage daughter a car, and she was just getting her license. And back then, you could only allow your child to drive with the learner's permit, and they could only have a family member in the car. They couldn't have friends. So we go off to a restaurant. We have dinner with her and her other friends, and we're all going to go to the movies together. Well, I got convinced, right, to let the friends get in the car. It's only a mile away to the movie theater. Let's go there. And guess what happens, Kurt, right? She gets T-boned, man, by somebody. And I'm frightened. I'm watching this happen. She throws an illegal U-turn. Someone hits her. The airbags deploy. I'm watching this thing. I got to run out there trying to open the door. All my two daughters are screaming. Their friends in the back are screaming. Everyone's trying to get out. And finally, the doors open up. We get them out. And after they were safe, what came to my mind, Kurt, was, holy moly, I have just exposed myself to massive, massive risk. If that person wants to sue me, I am super exposed. And I've got a small business at that point. I'm like, that could wipe me out. And so for just in that example, like the value you bring to the table, or an expert brings to the table, is being able to not only ask the right questions, but understand what's going on in the client's life right now that could have a potential for more risk. And then therefore you could, advise to have more products. Is that kind of tracking?
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Perfect example. And I'm sure your daughters are okay.
Yes. Yes.
I'm glad that happened. But yeah, case in point is just, I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a very high percentage of people across the country that do not have what's called an umbrella policy, which is excess liability coverage that gives you more liability coverage in the event of a catastrophic lawsuit against you, typically because of an auto accident. Mm-hmm. And so that one piece of advice that I give to everybody I speak to, which is a finite number, most people across the country don't get that because they're buying online. And they're just going for a transactional sale. They're going to buy auto insurance. They're going to buy home insurance. And granted, there may be an algorithm or AI that comes along and says, you should buy umbrella. But a computer telling you to buy umbrella insurance versus a person is a different story. The person typically is going to win that sale for themselves, but also more so for the client, because the cost of an umbrella, for a $10 million umbrella, it's $1,200 or $1,500 versus what it could cost if there's a $10 million or $8 million lawsuit. So that's huge. And then you mentioned the advice. The advice is critical, and it's like, you go through life, and if you have a tax situation that comes up, you call your accountant, you call your CPA. If you're a business owner, then you talk to your CPA, your accountant throughout the year. When something happens, you have a question. Same thing with an attorney. You have a question. Same thing with risk. Hey, my daughters are getting their license. What do I need to do? Well, obviously, you need to add them to your auto policy, but you should also make sure they take driver training. you should also have them sign a parent-teen contract that tells that they sign off saying, we're not going to drive after 10 o'clock. We're not going to drive friends in the car until we've been driving for a year, et cetera. And so, the risk advisor knows those things, has that mindset of how do we protect? And they share that with you in the moments that you want them to and that you need them to, so that you can then take that energy, transfer it to your life and apply it, if you decide to. And hopefully you do.
Yeah. No, and I think that's great advice. For our listeners, whether you're a realtor, firefighter, fire marshal, you're in insurance, or whatever you do. Like we all buy insurance, and Kurt, I hate to break this to you, but we only buy it because we have to. Okay. Like that's most of the time because we have to. But when you start to unpack the playbook of what high net worth are doing, they're buying it because they want to, and they understand the preservation of their wealth. And so why not do the same? And I'm in complete agreement. I think, an umbrella policy for all of us, we should make it affordable for all of us to at least take advantage of that. If you get nothing out of this podcast except that, like, you are way ahead of the game. And
just as far as the affordability, the minimum policy you can get is $1 million. And the cost of $1 million generally is between $200 and $500, depending on how many cars, how many drivers, that kind of thing. So you think about that and it's like, okay, it's cheap. And it's very good risk management to have that kind of coverage.
And smart. Very smart. I love that. I think more and more with the challenges that we have in insurance, being a hard market, there seems to be a need for more emphasis on a relational transaction versus just a transaction. Like you mentioned online, and I agree. I think a lot of the younger generation will say, I got this insurance thing, click, 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 and we're good. And it isn't until you have a claim that you realize what you've done. And they may empathize with you, but then they'll say, I'm so sorry, Larry or Mrs. Smith, here's where you're at. You don't have that coverage. Next time you should buy X. But what would you say the value is of the advisor? Like, I know that it's important, but do you have any use cases or examples where you were able to make an impact on a client who actually said, you know what, Kurt, I'm going to do that. And then sometime later, they called you back and said, oh my God, thank you, because if it weren't for that, X would have happened. Do you have any of those?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorites. And this is a high net worth client I work with in California, because I work with clients all over the country and Europe. But the mother is my client. Her daughter was buying a home, and it was a duplex. It was the daughter and the son were going to live there together. And they were going through the purchase, and the mother said, you got to call Kurt. He got me great insurance through a great insurance company. He's going to do great for you. So they put us in touch. I went through my process, gathering information, going out to underwriters. And this is kind of in the midst of this very difficult, hard market. And so ultimately it came down to, and I kind of sensed this at the beginning, it came down to, I didn't have a solution for them. I could not find an insurance company that would insure that house. And so at that point, actually before that point, I advised them, I said, I'm having difficulty on my end with my underwriters insuring this property. Please go to this company and get quotes as well. And so at that point, it's like counterintuitive. Like, Kurt, why are you sending them to a competitor? I'm like, well, that's the right thing to do, because they had a closing coming up in 2 weeks that they had to have insurance for. And that was my goal. They have to have insurance, whether it's through me or through somewhere else. And understanding the market in California, I knew like it's a possibility that I could not find coverage for them. So they went out to the other companies. They got a couple quotes. They actually got 3 quotes. And so at the end of it, they came back to me and they said, Kurt, here's the 3 quotes. What do you think? They didn't go to those companies and say, what do you think of these 3 quotes that are not your companies? Right. They came to me and they said, Kurt, what do you think? And I said, okay, let's do this. Because they were not, the quotes were not done to my satisfaction. They were missing certain coverages. The limits of coverage weren't adequate for this particular client, for this particular home. So we made adjustments. And at the end of it, we selected the one carrier that was not the carrier I work with, and the changes that we need to make, and they went with it. And so ultimately, it's understanding the client, it's understanding what the goal of the situation is, and the fact that they need guidance at a very difficult time in the California insurance market history. So that's one of my favorite ones. Even though I didn't win the business, I won the relationship. And so that client, my client, the one that I do work with, very much appreciated that. And their daughter now knows me as a resource for her, which is excellent. And I had another situation too, where it was a similar situation, and I insured the client for multiple properties. And one of the properties was dead center in a wildfire zone. Client received a non-renewal. Again, I went out to all the insurance companies that I work with, which is a finite number. There are thousands of insurance companies that work in every state of the country, and I don't work with thousands. I work with 4, 3, that type of number. And so my companies couldn't provide a solution. So I advised the client to go to another broker to find a solution. Again, he got the solution. He came back to me for advice. And at that point, I'm the trusted source of advice. And that's what's valuable to the client. And ultimately, he ended up going with a policy, not through me, but that was better fit for him and was a fit for him because there was no other option. So it's all about understanding what needs to be done and then helping the client find that solution at the end, no matter what the strategy is.
It's awesome. And I think, just from a business standpoint, what a great strategy to really put your customers' needs in front of your own. I think there's so many examples of, these salespeople just, yep, I'll go with you. Yeah, don't worry about that other bid. Yes, you're going to pay up the nose, and yes, you're going to have limited coverage, and too bad, so sad, pay me. That's good old fashioned used car salesperson, right? And so the beauty is that when I listen to these stories, I remember doing a job for a celebrity, and I'm there for probably 2 months. It's a massive hardwood floor job. There's acclimation that has to take place, and there's a lot happening. And I'm talking to the estate manager who's there, and I said, hey, how do you guys make decisions on other things that you're doing in construction here? Because they had a pool going on. They wanted me to give them a price for replacing air conditionings. And she says, P, it's interesting. All of us here, and this is in the city of Beverly Hills, she says, we all are very connected, and we all pride ourselves in having a guy. And I wrote that down. I'm like, okay, I got a guy. Like, they pride themselves in saying, I got a guy. You, Kurt, are the guy, right? And so when people are talking about insurance and talking about things, they're like, I got a guy, let me give you to him. What a great compliment that is for any of us that run a business or sell something, to be known as the guy, that someone else is referring to someone else. Because even though in your example, you may not make the sale for that one sale, I promise you know this already, your name is being spread already out to more and more people. And so there's not going to be a lack of business for you. It's really the brand that you've created, I think, is awesome. And I think more of us need to continue in that process of making sure that we are the guy, we are the provider of information, whether it benefits us or not, we're there for the better good of our clients.
No, I completely agree. And thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. And, I think, today's world is very complex, and it's more and more complex with artificial intelligence, with data, analysis, and so much data that is populating our everyday lives. Whether it's looking at the Weather Channel, looking at the news, looking at your own balance sheet for your financial statements, there's so much complexity. And sure, you can go online and do your own research, and that's great. But if you can have easy access to someone who knows that stuff inside and out, then why not? I would do that all day long, every day. And that's the way the independent agency system works. It's like, you can go to an independent agency office, sign up for insurance for home and auto insurance with the independent agent, and you got it. You got your advisor. So you can call them up and say, what's going on with the markets these days? And they'll tell you. And so, and the old saying is, the more you know, the more power you have, or whatever it is. Knowledge is power. And that's true. And so, yes, you can get that from the internet, but having a professional who's filtering it for you and helping you better understand it, it's worth its weight in gold.
And someone who does it day in, day out. I mean, there's something to be said about, hiring a contractor that is going to replace your garbage disposal, versus you giving it a shot. You don't have any tools. You got to go to the hardware store. You got to figure it out. There's something to say about someone who's going to come in there and in 20 minutes, it's done, right? Because they do it day in, day out, and they have expertise. I love that. Now, Kurt, let's talk more about this risk software that you have, this risk review. Because I think there's a based on our conversation in the past, there's some benefits here that I think a lot of brokers could take advantage of, from the standpoint of they gather information without having to rethink everything all over again for every client. Can you describe a little bit about what your software does?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's definitely a passion of mine. So Risk Review is a software company, and we build smart forms, digital forms that insurance agents can use to gather information from clients. And this is not just for new business, it's for renewals, gathering updated risk information. It's for service transactions, things like adding a new car to a policy where you might have to call the dealer to get information about the new car. It's adding new pieces of jewelry or artwork. There's so many things. I always like to say that, I wasn't, my title wasn't, personal risk advisor. It's, personal risk data gatherer or something. Data gathering was like 60% of my job. It's just knowing what questions to ask. And if I didn't know, researching or asking somebody and then asking the questions. And it would take, half the day. I'd just be on phone calls, peppering people with questions. So I said, no more. That's a thing of the past. There's a better way to do it, more efficient for everybody. And we started building smart forms that have all the relevant questions built into them already in a streamlined fashion, using technology in an efficient manner, and just send a link to the client or to the prospect or to the dealership that's selling the car, and have them fill out the form real quick, hit submit. You get all that data back as the insurance advisor.
Wow.
And then you can analyze the data. And that now you've elevated yourself as an advisor from a chief data gatherer to a chief risk officer. And so that's what I love most about Risk Review, and what that enables agents to do is it enables them to become a true advisor, rather than just trying to figure out which questions to ask. And so, Risk Review, we have a library of over 150 forms. We're always building new forms. Some agencies have custom programs that they need custom forms built for them. So we do that. And so for our clients of Risk Review, this is agencies anywhere from one agent up to thousands of agents, all across the country. And they're benefiting from the time savings. They're benefiting from the efficiencies, and also providing a consistent client experience to their clients, from a data gathering aspect. So, I love talking about it. I love sharing it with people. And I use it myself on a daily basis. Also, always looking for new processes to make more efficient through smart forms.
I love it. Now, Kurt, hold on. I mean, I almost stopped you a minute ago. The whole dealership example you gave. Are you telling? Because like when I think about this, I'm like, okay, I'm your insured, and you're sending me this information. I'm like, oh, great. I got a half hour, 3 hours worth of information I got to fill out. Who's got time for this? Still knowing that it's to my benefit, right? But what you said is you send the form to the car dealership. You send it to third parties, and you're like, hey, fill this out for my client, and then you don't even bother the client with that. Like that to me is like, I love that, because this is, and I don't know, I'm sure this is how you thought it out, but the reality is like the high net worth space is so concerned about, like you had said before, about their time. And so to make demands on their time is really a fast way for them to dismiss you. Like, no, you don't understand me. But for you to say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, guess what? Who's the dealership? What city is it in? What's the car? No problem. I'll handle that. And then someone else, you get it to them and say, hey, Johnny, I need you to fill this out. You need to do it. You got, 30 minutes, get it back over to me. I got it processed, right? Whatever that is, but you're taking care of, you're almost like a concierge. Right? Feels like a concierge service, right? To be able to say, let me gather all the risk or the asset information so I can then look at everything and then provide you the best risk analysis in the review process so they can make better decisions. I love that, man.
Thanks, man. I love it too. And our users love it. And the dealers love it too. And because it's truly just understanding the process, and it's understanding where the bottlenecks are and where the roadblocks are. And ultimately it's like the dealership needs the ID card and the binder to close a deal. And the client wants the car. And I, as the insurance advisor, I need the VIN number and the window sticker and all this other stuff to create the insurance. So the dealer's happy to do it. They love doing it. And so that extends to not only that new car experience, but all of the other forms that we build. We think through the process and what's involved in it and incorporate that into the questioning, into the question set. So it's not just like, oh, you're buying a home. What's the year built? What's this? That's all this stuff. It's also what goes along with that. Like, do you want flood insurance? Do you want earthquake insurance? Do you want wildfire? Do you have a business at home? All these other factors that go into that decision process. We think through it. And so that the other people don't have to think through it.
Man, I love that.
It's a lot more than just a question set.
Yes.
Process incorporated into that whole thing.
Yeah. And Kurt, here's my suggestion to you. I was going to say it as an offer to people, but what about offering someone a 30-day trial, man? I mean, maybe you already do that, but I think like this would be cool, because you might have some people that say, hey, yeah, cool. This sounds cool. And I'm signing up for your 30-day trial if you have one, because I want to be able to understand also as a vendor, how else can I improve? What other things can I add to my value proposition? But for brokers, I think, if they were getting in contact with you, you'd offer them some sort of a sweet deal, maybe for listening to the podcast and calling you, or maybe they get some sort of a trial. But I think experimenting with something like this would be cool. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. We do offer a trial, but happy to do something for listeners of the show, man.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome, brother. And look, because, right now, brokers need to be, and then like I have a handful of brokers that are my friends, and I care about them, and they're hustling. They're out there trying to make it happen. But they need to, and they would tell me, they're like, I'm investing time in my relationship. I've got to inform, I've got to gather info. And this is largely what they do, is gather information. And the bummer sometimes is, and this is what I like about your software. The bummer sometimes is they create a relationship with the broker, and so they love her or they love him, and then they hand it off to their employee and say, hey, Cindy, gather the info. And Cindy's overloaded with work anyway. And so she's like sending out multiple emails to the one client, flooding the client with a lot of questions and different times of information where the client's now getting frustrated. And so the broker suffers because the experience is suffering. And so if you could people can use your tool to streamline the experience to be and feel better, that's a win, man.
Yeah, so absolutely. And they can. And thank you for mentioning that. And I'd love to provide something to your listeners.
Yeah, I want to see it too. So don't forget about me. Okay.
And I give you kudos for that. I mean, it's like, as a person involved in the ecosystem of high net worth insurance, like the more you can understand about the business as a whole, the better you're going to be able to serve the client and the brokers that you serve. It's very smart.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. Now, Kurt, you mentioned earlier about flood insurance, wildfire insurance, and all these other things and coverages. Can we talk a little bit about water damage risk and how big of because look, wildfire has taken like the front pages of everything. And years and years ago, like we were so busy and then we got into wildfire prevention. But the reality is risk is not only wildfire. Risk comes in many shapes and forms. And what I'm hearing, and it continued and we've heard for a while, but now it's being echoed even more, that water damage is one of the risks that insurance companies really wanted to minimize or eliminate altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my least favorite topics, just because it's such a huge issue. Water damage is the number one cause of loss across the country. And there's weather related, which is flooding, or there's non-weather related, which is like a burst pipe or an overflowing plumbing fixture. So it is a huge issue, from a damage caused by the water perspective, but also from a conservation perspective, from in a state like California where, drought's a serious issue, conservation of water is huge. And so it's a big deal. Insurance companies, if you look at your policy, you may see a water damage sub-limit on that policy. Most policies have this on the policy. And so it could be anywhere from $5,000 for water damage to $25,000 to $50,000. You might be able to buy up coverage to $100,000 or maybe more, depending on the insurance company you're with. But it's an extremely, extremely important coverage. I had a loss a few years ago, and it was a toilet that overflowed. It backed up and overflowed on the second floor, caused $750,000 of damage to this house. And it was a big house, but a standard policy with $5,000 or $25,000 sublimit on water damage, it's not going to cover anything. So that's where like a high net worth insurance company contract provides unlimited coverage for water damage and backup of sewers and drains and that type of thing. And so a critical difference that you want to be aware of, if you're, depending on what company you're with. And so again, that's where you talk to your advisor, your broker, and say, what coverage do I have for backup of sewers and drains? Because that is probably your number one biggest risk. They're starting to put more limits on this too, because of how big an issue it is. Wow. And to take it further, in terms of hardening your home against water damage, this is not a brand new topic. It's been going on for probably 20 or so years, where people are installing devices to prevent water damage. But today, more than ever before, insurance companies are requiring clients, policyholders, to install certain devices to prevent water damage. And so, a device that your listeners should look into is called an automatic water shutoff valve. There's several on the market. You can get one called PHYN, PHYN. There's one by Moen. It's called Flow by Moen. There's Leak Defense Systems. There's FlowLogic, Streamlabs. There's probably 17 different devices on the market. And they all they all pretty much do the same thing, but and they're relatively inexpensive, anywhere from $400 to $2,500, depending on the device. But super important.
I love that. It's so we've been installing automatic water shutoff devices for years, and we're definitely seeing the increase in demand. And maybe it's related to the insurance requirements, and also in the high net worth space, they do not want the interruption of time, period. And so we had this one client similar to yours. I had a family office call me and they said, "Hey, OP, I need you to install water shutoff devices. Go check it out." I said, "Cool, no problem." And so we provide the bid. They said, "Okay, great." And we install the device, and this device, you get an alert on your cell phone. And he tells me, "Hey, OP, I'm going to have you do this with more of my clients because this specific client just had a flood, and they called XYZ company out of the Google, and it was $700,000 worth of water damage." Okay. And so we're coming in after the fact to install the water shutoff device. Kurt, not even 4 months go by. Okay. We get the call, and this celebrity client is on the phone screaming, "My house is underwater. I need your help," et cetera, et cetera. So we dispatched there at 10 p.m. at night. We're handling it. The beauty is this water damage was probably $5,000 worth of damage. And I think about how awesome that, you have experts around these clients that say, you need to do this. Let me coach you to do that. Let me guide you to do this. And it was the water shutoff device, because if that device was not installed, it's 10 p.m. at night. No one's paying attention to anything, right? They're about to go to sleep, if not already in bed. And then this water runs the whole night. In the morning, you discover this, another major disaster. And so that to me was a story that I thought, okay, these clients, the biggest thing for her was time. Like, do $700,000 worth of damage and being out of my home completely interrupted my life. Never do I want to see that happen again. And so these devices are they're lifesavers. Love them. Love them.
I do as well. I have one in my house. I've tested 2 of them. It saved me 5 times. And I'm not blaming my sister-in-law. We were on vacation. I asked her to come feed the pets, and she turned the water on and didn't turn it off. Luckily, I got the text saying my water was on. So it was fun. It was fun. And we joke about it today, but they definitely save homes. And to your point, they may not prevent 100% of the loss, but they minimize it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, as we kind of wrap this conversation up, it's really, customers and clients and homeowners, we need to understand our risk in general as a whole, whether it's a cyber attack, right? And like that movie that came out that has kind of that emphasis on it, or whether it's a wildfire, or whether it's an earthquake or a water damage. There are things that are out there right now that could have an impact on your family, on your business, on your life, and protecting yourself and understanding what those risks could be. So intelligent and so smart to do. And to your point, Kurt, it's affordable oftentimes. Like some of the things that we like, oh, I can't afford this, I can't afford that. But really, when we start having the conversations with our experts, maybe we could afford it. Right. And I think overall, for me, managing the risk is important. And I think the insurance carriers are paying more and more attention now, more than ever, of who is managing their risk, because that's who I want to line myself up with, and that's who I want to take my chance on. Is that pretty accurate?
100%. Yep. There's insurance companies that are building themselves around certain risk pools and certain characteristics that can be found in data, and so they're looking at these things and saying, okay, this is the type of client that I want to insure, and those are the ones that we're going to go after. and then the underwriters make it happen. And so, yes, absolutely. The more you can do, and this goes back to our conversation about, hardening your home and making yourself and your properties a better, more attractive to an insurance company. It's all very important today more than ever.
Boom. Awesome. Kurt, is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with as we close up this talk? And again, I appreciate your insight, your wisdom, and these podcasts are meant for us to get just one nugget, and so we can improve our life, so we can improve our ability to manage risk with whatever it is. So I do appreciate your time in making this happen for me. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show as well, OP. It's always great talking to you, and always look forward to seeing you at the PRMA Summit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think especially for those in wildfire-prone areas, California, Arizona, Colorado, these are areas where, put some effort, put some time and some energy into how you can better protect yourselves from these things, how you can harden your home, how you can make yourself more attractive to an insurance company come renewal time. Because even if it's not an issue today, it may be an issue tomorrow. And so I want you to be prepared for that. And I know OP does as well. And use your broker. If you have a broker that you love, or even if you don't love them, call them up and get to know them, ask them their advice, ask them their opinion, see what they tell you. And then and think about it, ponder it. If it makes sense for you, take their advice. If it doesn't, then don't. But they're a resource for you, not just to purchase insurance. They're a resource for you to learn. And I think that's the biggest thing. Certainly if you'd like to contact me and pick my brain on something, I'm available. Best way to reach me is through LinkedIn. I'm on there too much. But that's kind of like my drug of choice. But that's it. Be safe out there, and listen to shows like this and just stay informed.
I love it. Kurt, really quick, I do want to add this really quick. So for you listeners, don't forget, for Kurt Software, he's got some sort of a free trial. I'm going to go ahead and push that for you, Kurt, because I really do believe in more and more tools. But lastly, I remember we talked earlier, you created this LinkedIn video series with the gingerbread house. Is that right? Okay. Why don't you unpack that really quick before we leave here and tell me and tell our listeners yeah, go for it.
So number one, you have to understand, I've been building gingerbread houses for about 20 years.
Wow.
It's a tradition I do every year with my kids, and they join in and we design. It's fully custom gingerbread house. And they've gotten better over the years. The initial ones you don't want to see. But so this year, I run the New York chapter, New York Metro chapter of the Private Risk Management Association. And this year we wanted to do a contest. And we wanted to offer prizes and just make it something fun that people could join in, whether or not you were a member of the PRMA. And so throughout the course of December, I did, I think, about 5 videos, and each one was with a different company, a different professional. The first one I did was with Berkeley One of our insurance companies, and I interviewed their top actuary, and we tried to develop a algorithm for gingerbread house insurance. And so we had fun doing that. It was like a 4-minute video, and so it's all in good fun. I think the next video we did was on what is the replacement cost of a gingerbread. So we interviewed a guy from E2 Value, who they have a software that develops replacement cost estimates for homes and commercial properties. Wow. And so we had some fun there. And then we did one with Amwins, which is an excess and surplus lines carrier. Because ultimately, the story went, we couldn't find insurance in the admitted markets for gingerbread.
Oh, wow. Okay. You had to go not admitted.
Which I know Californians are very familiar with. So we had, so it was just fun. And now, and I'm not sure if we're going to do this yet, but now the end of the story is the loss.
Ooh.
And so we have to figure out what the loss is going to be. Is it fire? Is it milk damage? Is it
milk damage?
is it a candy cane falling on the house or whatever the case is? I don't know.
I love that. I think that's so creative. But I going back to what we were saying earlier, like there's a lot of doom and gloom conversations going out there. And look, it's just the reality of what we're facing. But we need to be able to laugh and have a good time. And so I think doing that with the gingerbread house, I think it's smart. I think it's funny and lighthearted for everyone to be able to enjoy and understand. So awesome. Kurt, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you being on our show again, and take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, OP.
All right. Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode of All Things Wildfire. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show and follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things wildfire. And as always, thanks for listening.